Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Here we are again on Friday. As you can probably tell by my voice, I'm a little bit under the weather. But you know what? We're all going to be okay. Today is Q&A specific to Jiu Jitsu, which I'm about 4 years into that journey and very fortunate to have met some extremely experienced coaches along the way. Sat down with two of them. One of them is my coach, Davison, and the other one is my coach's friend / training partner, John Frankl. Between the two of them, I think there's 8 or 9 stripes on their black belts. So yeah, probably been around the block once or twice or half a dozen times and did my best to capture the questions and batch them appropriately. So just about every topic that was submitted got covered. And on that note, Full Auto Friday, number 118 with Davison and John Frankl. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Okay. Man, we got some questions.
Good.
Like 97 of them.
Good.
Not all of them are good.
I'll trust you on the edits. Filtration.
So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and...
On the bad ones, just call out who the person was that asked the question.
Yeah. It's 108 questions. Comments, I should say. Some of them are just... I've come to the conclusion that the internet is an IQ test that the vast majority of people don't pass. And the comment section just shows you their score. So, before we begin... We might as well, you guys are going to have to introduce yourself again so it can always be standalone. And then people can have a little bit of context to your answers. I'll let you guys, he has 4 stripes. So, John, I'll let you go. You have 5 now?
As of last June. It's been about a year. Yeah.
3 for the first 3, and then is it 5?
Yeah.
What's your next one? Like 76 years from now for the 6th stripe?
It's 5, 5, 5, 5. Forever.
Didn't they start modifying that?
Maybe.
Just a touch to make sure that
less gringos get it. Yeah. As far as I know, it's 5 forever. But who knows? Maybe they jumped it again. They keep doing this.
I feel like there's a 10 in there somewhere. I might be wrong in that.
Okay. The 10 I know is that nobody else can ever have a 10th degree black belt. Only Elio and Carlos. Everyone else can go to 9.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. But anyway, I'm only 1 year in, so 4 more years.
4 more years until you're a
6th
degree black belt.
And then you change belts at 7.
Yeah.
Conceptually, that's hard for me to wrap my head
9
around.
years from now, I'll have that coral belt. If I live 9 years.
Who would give that to you?
Well, Roberto Maya's the guy who gave me the black belt, so he continues to sign off.
Okay. So you've been doing jiu-jitsu a touch.
29.
29 years.
Ish, I think.
5 stripes worth of that as a black belt.
Yeah.
Okay. Much longer as a black belt than before you were a black belt.
21 at black belt now, yeah, I think.
Okay. Travis?
I
20 at black belt.
have been doing jiu-jitsu for 23 years and will get my 4th stripe a year from December because I got my black belt in 2009.
From Mr. Matt Thornton.
Mr. Matt Thornton, my friend, business partner, and coach.
Tall man. Before we get into the questions, thoughts on Leandro Lowe? Kind of new in the news.
Yeah.
Been noodling. This one I was, for whatever reason, I know almost nothing about him other than he was a dominant IBJJF competitor.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been noodling on it a little bit because he was 33, I believe. Probably had been training for 29, if not 30 of those years. I'm guessing that he probably developed his motor patterns on the mat and had it all shut down by probably a 9-second or a 9-cent round and a shit decision. Not necessarily on his side, but on the other person's side. And it's a good reminder for me, and I hope for a lot of people, that it's not magic. I do believe that people will get to the place where they think it is magic, and literally an asshole with a round that probably cost under 10 cents.
It's not the first time that sort of things happen.
Yeah.
And we actually spent some time yesterday with Ari talking about that very subject. Just jiu-jitsu is great. And if you know it and somebody else doesn't know it, and it's just a physical altercation between the two of you, it works
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
But we were just talking about the fact, like in Montana, I just assume everyone's carrying.
Yeah, it's a
because
safe
pretty
bet.
much everybody is, and same in Texas. And yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu works good, but it doesn't make you bulletproof.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that you should avoid violence at all costs.
Absolutely.
And that you should just let somebody make, I mean, I don't know the specifics. And
He took a bottle off their table, I think.
I think so. And I mean, I've been there. I've been the asshole who responded
Me too.
poorly to that. And I've probably been the guy who took the bottle as well. But the fact that could terminate in the loss of life is just insane to me, especially with the effort that he put in to get to where he's at. It's just a crazy reminder of like, fuck, it should be a measure of absolute last resort. And even then find another resort.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
And then, you live in other places where maybe not as many people have guns, but they have 3 friends, they have baseball bats, they have lawyers. There's a lot of ways to lose if you let it go physical.
I totally agree. Shall we begin on the questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So for people watching, I'm on my phone because I'm literally reading the questions right now. There were some trends, as there always are, in questions. I would say we'll go from like the top 3. Is it too late to start jiu-jitsu at 55? There were many questions about age.
Yeah. So I'm 55, so I get to answer first. Of course, I'm not starting, but I feel great. Today is the best day to start. I mean, listen, if someone asks a question about I'm in a wheelchair or whatever, then there are special needs, but age is not one of them. So, are you going to be a world champion? No. Should you start yesterday? Yes.
You could be a world champion in your age demographic.
Sure.
You are one of the least injured black belts that I've ever been around.
Yeah.
How have you been able to train for as long as you have at the age that you are and not, I mean, let's be honest, you talk to a lot of people like, yeah, hey, can you start on this side because my neck doesn't work that way, and also don't touch this shoulder and this elbow, and I don't use this hand, and don't touch my legs.
Yeah. So there's a lot of luck involved. I try not to be prideful. There's a lot of luck involved. Like, I wasn't always training perfectly smart, but 2 things that I think I had control over. One, starting at Hickson's at the time, and Hickson was a pro fighter at the time, so we saw him twice a week. Like Luis, who's now in Maui, was running the gym really. But the guys from Hickson's influence, and then because the guys running the gym were actually quite small, there was a huge emphasis on technique and a pretty interventionist vibe. Like they would stop you. Hey, no. It doesn't matter if you're winning. That's not jiu-jitsu, right? They would intervene and make sure everyone was being really technical. So the beginning was good. And then I just got it in my head really early that like the only thing that was really important to me was, can I train tomorrow, and can I train next year, and can I train next decade? And so I always, I like training hard and competing, fighting, those, I wouldn't say I love it, but I like it. And, but it was always tempered with the fact that, this has to be jiu-jitsu, and I want to do jiu-jitsu tomorrow. So if things got weird, just start over. It's just, reset.
Fair. Travis, age?
Agree with John. I thought I started late at 26. Or I guess I was, what was I? I'm 48 now. So no, I was 25. And I remember at 25 being like, man, I wish I would have started sooner.
I've never had that thought since I started at 40.
So, no, I think, I mean, in a perfect world, like I look at my kids, and people there's a huge advantage if you do start at 3 and 4 or 5 years old. But the reality is, it's like John said, it's never too late. It's only, and it's not just jiu-jitsu. There's so many things in life where people are like, well, I'm 48 now. I'm too old to start a new relationship, or I'm too old to start a business, and I don't buy that. And assuming, like John said, that you're 55 and physically capable of doing jiu-jitsu, then today's a great day to start. And if you train smart, I mean, you remember Rick Plavidal?
Yeah.
I gave him his black belt at 64, believe he was 64, maybe even older.
So he probably started around the age that this person's
started in his 50s. Yeah, he started in his 50s, and he was awesome to roll with, awesome to train with. He's 70 years old now and sailing around the world by himself with his wife. And yeah, I mean, I
feel that way sometimes, by myself with my wife.
That's a different podcast. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I started at 40, so I'm closer to this guy's age, starting-wise, than you guys did. And the only thing I would add is you're going to have to set realistic expectations.
Yes. 100%. And get a good gym.
Yeah.
That isn't trying to, just throwing in with a bunch of 18-year-olds who want to be world champions that are trying to kill you.
Or as you age, if he started in 5 years from now and he's 60, and say he's a blue belt or a purple belt, and a 20-year-old dude rolls in off the street who throws a white belt on, it's not magic. But just set the expectation and realize against your peer group, you're going to fuck some shit up. Yeah. But probably not against 20-year-olds.
And just to play devil's advocate, I started at 27, and so I can get into that mindset too. Like, oh man, if I would have started earlier, I'd be this and that. But some people start early and burn out. And they start early because their dad made them and they don't value it, and so they're, again, if it's like I wanted to be a world champion or I wanted to be a UFC champion or something, there's a timestamp on that. You can't start too late for that. But in terms of getting really good at jiu-jitsu and enjoying it and valuing it for the rest of your life, there's something to be said for choosing it yourself, starting it a little bit later. No one forced you to do it. And, a lot of the kids are just like, oh, this is work, or someone else wanted me to do it. So
I've watched that happen even in the short time at the gym, seeing kids where you could tell it was kind of forced, and then they get to an age where resistance, they become more powerful in their resistance, and it's like, wow, bummer.
Yeah, it happens right around 13 and 14.
Do you find that it happens at different ages for boys and girls?
I've noticed. No, I don't see a difference really with men and women. I think the boys and girls are pretty similar. I think some of them, it's their thing, and it's just luck of the draw. Like they got put into jiu-jitsu and they fall in love with it and they stick with it, like Stella and Ricky. Yep. And then, their brother, shares the same genes, but, towards the end there, he was just doing burpees because he refused to participate. So
I would rather literally do anything but burpees.
I know. He's stubborn, and so is Coach Gus, and so he would spend entire classes just doing calisthenics.
Oh, it was Gus telling him to do it?
Yeah.
I would have done the burpees then too the whole time, just to spite Gus. This is an interesting one because you both have started gyms. Just to make this standalone for people, John, you introduced jiu-jitsu to Korea and have been around that for a long time, and it has to do with being a training partner for women. What steps can a man who is a beginner at jiu-jitsu and has no idea what he's doing take in order to be a better training partner for women? Things could get weird, and the last thing I want to do is make anyone uncomfortable. And I would say this probably applies to starting and just being a training partner. What do you guys recommend? Because it's certainly...
For me, I just try not to treat them differently at all. And I don't think I guess can is a big word. Things can get weird, but they shouldn't get weird. And I tell all the women that I teach or that I train with, it's like, look, we're just doing jiu-jitsu. Sometimes they think I'm taking it easy on them. I say, no, you're 120 pounds. I would do this to a man who was 120 pounds. He'd be a small man, or it could be like a boy, a 13-year-old or something. Yeah. So I'm training jiu-jitsu. That's all I'm doing. But I'm 50 or 60 pounds heavier than you, and add the belt difference, so I'm modulating, but we're still just doing jiu-jitsu.
Well, and I think the more too, I think where you were going with that question with it being weird, I think you have to set the expectations up front. I mean, we're doing jiu-jitsu, and it's close, and
you're going to be touching each other.
You're going to be touching each other, and there are times where things get brushed and touched, and not intentionally, but as long as you, again, are remembering, okay, wait, we're here doing jiu-jitsu, and if you just keep moving forward, you don't have to make it weird, like pausing and sorry, and bringing attention to it. Yeah, that makes it weird, but if you just keep on rolling, I mean,
Yeah.
it's forgotten. I mean, it's pretty hard to be preoccupied with that sort of stuff if you're truly focused on doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if they're trying to choke you, rip
Yeah.
your arm off. What would you recommend though, outside of the? I think it would be very easy for somebody outside to feel that it would be sexually
Sure,
awkward having
sure.
no experience.
Absolutely.
But how about somebody who's past that threshold and maybe like the women are kind of avoiding them at open mat? I mean, talking weight modulation. What other kind of stuff would you guys recommend to offset the differences in physiology?
Okay, I will answer. I'm going to take a step back because this just hit me. I would ask this person, but I would ask myself and tell anyone this as well. Like, okay, let's flip the question. So that's not weird with a man? It's weirder with a man in some ways, you know.
Yeah, depending on which way you float.
Well, but so I mean, like, so what's the difference with the women? Like, you're like close contact and it could be misconstrued as something beyond jiu-jitsu. It's like, but that's cool to do with a dude? It's like, it's just jiu-jitsu unless you're thinking in weird ways, right?
I think it just exceeds the normal social physical contact that you would have with somebody you may not know that well.
Right.
Dudes are just idiots, and we've been fighting each other since there were two dudes in a room.
Sure.
So
Yeah, on the front lawn. Yeah,
For
in the
sure.
locker room, yeah.
yeah,
That's true. Well, yeah, but I mean, this is a generic question, but I would look at myself. Like, what am I doing that's making people avoid me? You know, because if a woman has signed up for a co-ed class and she's training with other people, the ones who don't sign up, it's hard to convince them. Like,
Yeah.
my wife is like, she wants my daughter to do it for self-defense and stuff, but she's like, I don't want to do that. That's weird. I don't want to be rolling around with guys like that. So she's not on the mat. But if they're on the mat, that means they know what's going on and they signed up and they're comfortable. So you got to kind of look at yourself like, okay, am I rough? Am I weird? Am I putting out some kind of vibe? You know,
have I washed my gi this week?
that too, myself and my gi.
Yeah. What do you think, Trev?
I think that John brings up a good point. I think if, we encourage people to not roll with people they don't want to roll with. Like, I give everyone permission. I'm like, look, if there are people in the room that you don't want to roll with, you don't have to. Like, nobody's forced to roll with everybody on the mat. So, if you find yourself being the person who's like, wow, like a lot of people don't want to roll with me, then there's probably a problem, maybe too rough, maybe not enough energy, because it goes both ways. Some guys are like, jello, and that's not any good for their training partner. And then other people are the opposite. That's not any good for their training partner. So I think if you give the students permission to pick and choose who they want to roll with and let them know that, hey, if there's somebody in here that makes you uncomfortable, if there's somebody you're afraid to roll with because you think you're going to get hurt when you roll with them, then you can tell them no. Like, you're not forced to roll with everybody on the mat.
Yeah, I would say reinforce being your own best advocate.
Yes. And I also remind people, look, if you want to get good at jiu-jitsu, make everyone around you good at jiu-jitsu, because everyone's going to want to roll with you. And the more people that want to roll with you and the more time you spend on the mat with different bodies, the better you're going to get quicker. You want to make sure that you're not getting good at jiu-jitsu quick.
Yeah.
Be a shitty training partner and don't have anyone who wants to drill with you or train with you, and you're going to progress way slower than you would if you're actually concerned about the other person's experience during the drill and things like that. And I think because jiu-jitsu is an individual sport, it's really easy for us to get, focused on the outcome for us and forget about the fact that we're all on the mat trying to learn something together. And I think if you spend a little bit more time thinking about what your training partner's doing right, what your training partner's not doing right, it actually informs your jiu-jitsu as well, not just theirs.
It's an individual team sport for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it without your training partners. It'd be super weird if you tried. Although I have seen videos with these sandbag dummies. I don't know how effective that is. I'm not really interested, but it does seem that people truly are trying to make it an individual sport sometimes. I digress. Best things to focus on in the first 6 months of training.
Oh, learning to relax, breathing.
We both know that's not happening inside of 6 months.
I know, but
let's
if
give
it-
them a more attainable goal.
but if it could, it would be so much better. Because we all joke about it, and it's a joke, and it's a cliche, and all of that stereotype because it exists, right? Like spazzy white belt. Well, what does that mean? We all know what it means. It's that tension. There's just so much tension being put into everything. And it's a good way to injure yourself, right? When you're tensing everything all the time. So in that first 6 months, if they just learned how to relax and, you know, breathe and be comfortable on the mat and not have that death grip all the time, they would get better way quicker, and they would have a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, like I would say pure focus on posture, technique, and breathing, and not even thinking about outcomes. And you should be losing. If you're not losing, you know, 3 months, 3, 4, 5, 6 months into it, if you're actually able to hang with people who've been there for years, it's a horrible school. You should probably leave. But if you're at a good school, you should just assume that everyone's better than you, and you can't control them. They're going to control you 100%. The only thing you can control is your breathing, your posture, your attempt at the technique, which will be countered because everyone's better than you. But if you start breaking your breathing rhythm and your posture and your technical sequences in order to, you're never going to win, but in order to not lose or lose more slowly, I think it's going to retard your growth.
It's a tough concept for people to let go and realize that regardless of what they do, it's not going to go their way. It's a very interesting thought process / personal conversations while staring up at the fan when you first start off.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I live now. Okay, awesome.
And we talked about this yesterday and all the time, like a good coach and a good school should make it not dangerous. It should make it not rough, but no one can make it easy. Jiu-jitsu is not easy. So when people are like, oh, I want jiu-jitsu for everybody, it's like, I do too, actually. But it's not that anyone should be excluded. Like certain sports, like, no, there's only 10 spots on this team. You're weak, you're short, you're slow, you're not on the team. Jiu-jitsu is awesome because if you don't quit, you're on the team, right? No one's going to cut you. But real jiu-jitsu will never be easy. It can be safe, it can be fun, you know, it doesn't have to be rough, but it's just not easy. And it's just not for everybody.
What was the quote that Adam Singer uses? It's not, I think I heard Adam say it. It's not who's the best, it's who's left.
Is
that the correct?
That's Chris Howder, yeah.
Not who's good, it's who's left, yeah.
Yeah, if you just don't quit and you keep coming. Yep. Yeah. As a purple belt, I'm curious what percentage of training should I be drilling versus rolling? And of the rolling portion, how should the mix look between fellow purples, higher belts, and lower belts?
I'm assuming by drilling he means like situational sparring or position sparring, not...
That'd be my guess, yeah.
Not rote drilling. Hickson answered this. I think Henry said this. Hodger said this. So Hickson once, I asked him about it, and he said, well, if you want to get good at jiu-jitsu, that's all you really should do. But people like free sparring because it's fun and they'll get bored. So, you know, primarily be doing position sparring or situational sparring, and then end with 1 or 2 rounds of free sparring for people to get adrenalized and happy and, you know, play their A game. So if you want to have fun, I mean, free sparring is fun, but I think for making quicker and more definite improvements in your game, and not because he's a purple belt, like at every belt.
Yeah.
At every belt. You know, it's hard for me because I like just rolling around and doing what I'm good at. But to really improve, I think that what he's calling drilling, positional sparring is way more important.
I don't know if you know this, but at Dan's gym, Alpha, they start each class with positional drills, and then when it goes into open mat, I think it's 3-minute rounds to begin with, but they go through it at the same sequence. So it's positional, and God help you if one of those guys in that gym gets you into one of those positions, because it's just like a vice. It's almost like they practice it every day. And, you know, the mount maintenance being, I think, one of the first ones they start with, their back control escapes. And it's like, you can feel it in a roll when you get to one of those things where they've spent more time or they watered the grass. Like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's one of my favorite things from Henry's seminar, too, is the positional sparring.
Yep.
That's how he'll start Q&A. Oh, nobody has any questions? Cool. Let's do a mount escape drill for the next 2 minutes. And if you get out, you're going right back in, and then the hands just start flying up.
So it's a good way to do it.
What do you think, Trev?
I think drilling for sure. If you want to get better at jiu-jitsu, you should be drilling.
Does it matter the belt of the person that you're drilling with? Because he did ask that. At the purple belt level, should you be drilling up the ladder or spending equal time?
I think everybody
up and down.
Yeah, but when I moved here 16 years ago, I didn't have anyone to train with, and I was a purple belt, and then I got my brown belt within 2 months of moving to Montana, and so I went from brown to black belt over the next 2 years with all brand new white belts. I mean, my first, a lot of those guys are black belts now. But at the time, I didn't have any colored belts to drill with. And I think Hickson talks about that too, where he was doing a lot of training where he was far better than his training partners. And I think there's ways around that as far as handicapping yourself and starting in, bad positions and then working your way out, shark tanking yourself. If you got 5 guys on the mat, you stay in every round and they get to be fresh every round. So there's ways to do that. But as far as, if you're a purple belt and you're at a gym like ours where, might have 20, 30 people on the mat at noon and there's black belts, brown belts, purple belts, blue belts, white belts, there's value to rolling with everybody. I think there's value to roll with people that you're competitive with where it's kind of a coin toss. I think there's a lot of value in rolling with people that you're better than just to have an opportunity to practice some of the things that you're not good at yet, knowing that you're not going to be punished for it.
In an environment where the consequences are less.
Yeah,
correct.
I really want to try this, but oh my God, I'm going to end up on the bottom if I do.
Yeah. Well, or then, even I'll use you as an example for myself and even for like Michael and I were talking about this, like you have like positions that you're super good at. Like it's not bad for me to get mounted by you because it's, I need to practice from there because that your mount is such that it gives me an opportunity to try to develop better defense and better escapes. Whereas if I go with somebody whose mount is nothing, then my escapes can be okay, and my timing can be just okay, and I'm still getting out. So there is value, I think, sometimes to roll with people that are much better than you. Even if they're only much better than you in certain places, you can go to those places and then really kind of test yourself. And Michael refers to you as ankle weights.
He told me that the other day too. He likes to tell me these things while we're rolling. I'm like, God damn it, dude.
Not cool.
Well, no, but like he wants to try to pass your guard because he knows that if he spends time.
He doesn't want to let me practice my mount on him though, which I don't appreciate.
He told me that it scares him.
Well, that's why I make it non-consensual.
He might be a little claustrophobic.
and that's why I go there, just to realize like, it's not, might not get out. Might get cross collar choke, but not dying down there.
Yeah. A lot of the best guys, like Hickson, like Hodger, the Mendez brothers, when they move to here or to Britain and open schools, like they're surrounded by white belts and they continue to improve and continue to win world championships. And last week, 2 weeks ago, I just gave Michael Hines his black belt, and he's been teaching white belts for 2 years, and it's made him a lot better. He knows it. I felt it. So that's different than just drilling. But in terms of ideally, you have a established school, and exactly what Travis said, right where you are, above you and below you, and But I wouldn't, if this person lacks people above him or maybe lacks people below him, I don't know where he is or she, still fine, right? We'll be doing fine.
Be curious your guys' thoughts on this. I think if you were going to look at jiu-jitsu from a pure self-defense perspective, rolling with newer people, even as you ascend the belt tree, would actually be more realistic because they're going to do more unpredictable things.
100%.
Yep. Totally true.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm repeating what I've heard Henry talk about. He was like, jiu-jitsu people are really good at fighting people who do jiu-jitsu.
And predictable. Even if
they're super
win or lose,
predictable.
it's all you're doing the same thing. But white belts.
At some point you're like, okay, there's 2 of 4 options that may happen. And then somebody on their first day like, I actually didn't know the human body could move like that. And you just fucked me up.
Yep.
Sometimes with an elbow or a knee.
Yeah.
I wear a mouthpiece at all times.
Yeah.
Sometimes they hurt themselves,
Yeah.
and sometimes they hurt you.
Yeah.
Like
And I don't even necessarily mean getting hurt. They just move in a way where you go, oh,
Well, a lot of
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
A lot of times they turn the wrong way because they don't know that turning the wrong way is going to cause
Yeah.
damage.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is surprising, frightening sometimes to watch.
So this one goes into one of the categories of, it came up a few times, and it basically is about pacing in gas tank. And you already covered, hey, the first 6 months, maybe try to learn how to relax. But blue belt, been doing jiu-jitsu for 2 years now. My biggest problem in rolling is burning my gas tank. How do I not do this? I watch purple belts and upper belts roll, and it always looks so calm and smooth. But when I try to do that, it never seems to work. Do you have any advice?
Yeah. For starters, I think what I think he's saying is when I do that, I get beat a lot. And when I go really hard, maybe I make the 5-minute round without getting tapped, and then I'm gassed. And I think the difference is if your jiu-jitsu's like you've got 2 years of jiu-jitsu and the other guys on the mat have 6, 8, 10 years of jiu-jitsu, they can be more efficient and use less physical attributes and still have a competitive role. And at that lower level, you can be competitive as long as you mask what you don't know about jiu-jitsu with physicality. And so it might have more to do with maybe accepting the fact that I can roll for the full hour, I can breathe, I can relax, but I'm probably going to be beaten with jiu-jitsu more.
To a point, until you learn more jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And then that's going to, the path of the person who is muscling it out versus this is
So it's usually about late purple, early brown belt.
You have a very relaxed style. Has it always been like that for you? Any advice for somebody to, and it's actually really hard to, I mean, we can't really sit here and talk about it. You and I have rolled a bunch, so I know exactly what it feels like, but how would you coach somebody, if possible, to develop a style of game like you have?
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't start physically, it starts mentally. Like you have to make a mental commitment to doing that.
Yeah.
Because anyone can get drawn into, kind of escalation. Oh really? Oh really? Really? Yeah. But if you have a mental commitment to a certain kind of jiu-jitsu and you don't really let other people affect your philosophy or your pace, it's easier said than done. But yeah, I mean, it's like part of the reason I don't like competing is because even when I win, I feel like my jiu-jitsu is really ugly and inefficient. I'm winning, but with exactly the kind of jiu-jitsu I don't like. Looking at the clock, thinking about the ref, thinking about advantages. I can gas because it's just like 5 more minutes, and so and so yeah. I mean, it's not a good style for competition. It's not a good style for well, not necessarily a good style for time limits, and someone might just get one advantage and then just hug you and you lose. And
Super exciting to watch.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, just I've said like you got to like jiu-jitsu more than you like winning. I've been saying that for years, and it's just there's nothing really to add to that. Like some people get it immediately, some people don't, but I guess that's in a nutshell. That's what it is. I like jiu-jitsu. Everyone likes to win. I mean, I'm a human being. I love to win, and I hate to lose. But I like jiu-jitsu more than either of those things. More than I hate losing, and more than I like winning.
Makes sense. This one ties in a little bit more back to the positional training. What are the best ways to improve a specific position or guard? If you're trying to get better at butterfly or back mount control, half guard, or any position that you'd like to use, as an example, do you just hammer away at it constantly without ceasing, no matter how awful you are? Do you do positional rounds, learn all of the sweeps, etc. possible, and see what works? Do you get privates? Do you buy an instructional? Do you push to only work on that position constantly in live rounds? Only work with lesser skilled opponents, or any other strategy or combination? What are the coach's recommendations or strategies to make improvement or to develop a game in a very specific area?
Well, I mean, let's use the butterfly guard as an example, because he mentioned or she mentioned, do you learn all the sweeps? No. I think if we're talking about a position like butterfly guard or back control or whatever the position is that they want to improve on, I think you start with what makes this position good. Like, what is the posture? What, mechanically, where do I need to be at to make the position work? We were talking about this with half guard the last 2 weeks in class. And until you really can kind of master the posture of where your limbs need to be in relation to somebody else's limbs, where your pressure needs to be, I don't think you need to waste any time developing attacks. Like, if I can't stay on your back, there's no point in me learning, 6 different ways to submit you from back control, because I can't control the back. And there's no point in me learning sweeps from butterfly guard if I can't keep you from passing my butterfly guard. So in that sense, I would always start with, what is it that makes a particular position work? And then as you start to develop that control and the ability to hold the position or escape the position, depending on what you're working on, then you can kind of add in some options. But if I can't keep you from passing my guard, it's a waste of my time to start developing submissions and sweeps from guard until I feel comfortable and confident that I can recompose my guard, that I can keep you in my guard. And then from there, I can start to work on, what possibilities there are for me from that particular guard. And then I think that person's right. Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes to most of those questions. For sure, I would spend a lot of time positional sparring from the position that I want to improve on. And then at open mat, instead of just free rolling and letting things, go how they're going to go, I'd still, try to work from those positions, even if it meant, I touch hands with you and say, hey, I'm working on my back control. Do you mind if I start on your back?
Yeah, which both of you guys have done many different times. Yeah. What would you recommend for a student, though, that let's just say that their training pool of other participants doesn't want to do that? Would you, and they're at a level where they can keep somebody out of their guard, or like they want to focus on that position, would you try to funnel somebody to what you're working on without telling them? If you know that they're not going to be a willing participant, how would you have somebody sharpen a game in that way?
Yeah, I mean, if for a long time I wanted to work on, surviving on bottom and escaping positions, I wanted to get better at mount escapes. I wanted to get better at cross sights. I have a decent guard. Like, if I don't want you to pass, it's going to be hard for most people. But I can allow those passes to happen so that I can work back from, the position that I did want to spend time in without, you don't have to tell your training partner you're doing that, especially if they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to roll competitively or whatever. Well, you don't, in your mind, you'd be like, yeah, we're rolling competitively. Oops, you passed.
I was going to say, if you want to work on your bottom positions, that's going to be really easy to find training partners.
It's much easier on defense, because when you give something up, they'll take it.
Oh,
if you give the back, give the pass. On offense, you might have to ask them. Get people who understand what you're trying to do. I think it was a good question, and all of the it posed as a question, but all of those suggestions are valid at different times and in different situations. But I would also say that everything's interconnected, right? So if you really want to do one thing, but you're kind of in a rut, don't dig deeper and deeper and deeper. Sometimes, you'll just reinforce bad habits, and you'll start to get frustrated and think negative thoughts. So, obviously you want to get good at something, do it more. Practice it more, spar it more, watch videos. All of those are obvious and good ways to get good at any position. But I read a judo book decades ago by this guy Feldenkrais, who's more famous for movement. He has a whole school of movement, but he started as a judo guy.
Like just human body movement?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. If you search for Feldenkrais method, it's way more on that than it is on judo. But he said, in judo, it's standing versus groundwork. That was the big division, right? And he said, if you're really frustrated and none of your standing is working, he's like, do nothing but groundwork for a few months. And when you come back, I don't know why, your standing will be better. And he said, and if you're having trouble on the ground, work on your throws for a few months. And when you come back, your ground will be better. Sometimes just, leaving something alone, letting it kind of settle, and then also, you know, you can't just be like, I don't want to learn anything but leg locks, or I don't want to learn anything but chokes, because, you know, you have to have a guard to enter the leg locks, and if someone escapes from your leg lock and they pass, you have to have a cross side escape, and you know, you want to be good at takedowns, but you don't have guillotine defense. Good luck. You know, you're not going to get in that pocket because you're afraid of the guillotine. So I would also say don't hyper focus on one position, because they're all interconnected, and any weak point will just shut you down, even though you might have like a hyper developed game in one aspect, you'll be reluctant to try it. It's like, oh, you know, I'm trying to work on my guard, but my cross side escapes are horrible. How reluctant are you going to be to open your guard and start working on it if you're terrified that every time you get passed, you're done? So, you know, it's all interconnected.
It's an interesting thing to actually be terrified by, because what we're talking about is actually just terrified of losing.
Right. Yeah. No one's going to
It's not
stab
like
you.
you get a boulder dropped on your head.
No.
But I've definitely been there. I'm like, oh, fuck no, am I going to try this move? I really want to try this move, but the consequences are so severe. And then I'll think about it driving home, like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What was that consequence? There was no consequence whatsoever.
Yeah.
No. Nobody but you and the person you were rolling with, right? Like, there's 20 people at open mat. The clock's going.
And nobody's actually trying to hurt you.
No.
Yeah. You might get pinned for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Law enforcement needs better hand-to-hand skills, but not many officers will get serious about BJJ. Can you suggest any fundamental moves that can keep a cop on his feet, facilitate escape if they go to the ground, and help with control and handcuffing? It's a broad but also specific question.
I think those law enforcement specific programs it's better that they exist than that they don't exist, but no one's getting good in a weekend. You know, we come from a world of weekend certifications, and then I'm kind of ready to open my gym, and it's ridiculous.
Whatever could you be talking about, Joe?
You know, it's ridiculous. So better than not even ever seeing it, but I mean, I share the sentiments, and I think I talked to a police officer. He's retired now, and he's a brown belt. And I asked him, like, you train, you're a brown belt. Who else trains? And he's like, well, almost nobody. And I'm like, why? And he said, a lot of law enforcement officers, and I'm not anyone listening, I'm not speaking to you as an individual, and this was not my opinion. It was told to me by a law enforcement officer. He said they just they're not comfortable being manhandled by civilians. In other words, they go into the gym and they don't know if they're going to meet this guy later on a street corner dealing drugs, or, I mean, most jiu-jitsu guys probably aren't doing that, but, you know, in their head, this is a possibility. And then they go, and this guy learns how he's a purple belt or whatever, and they're a white belt, and he's tackling them and mounting them and choking them. And he said most of his fellow officers were very uncomfortable with that. So I thought, yeah, I can see that.
I would
start your own class.
I would find myself far more uncomfortable not being able to get out from the guy.
When it matters.
When it matters. And yeah, you're going to get smashed when you first start, but eventually the tables or the scale will level itself out.
Yeah.
And then you'll be giving that person a hard time. And then all of the things that may happen to you on the street are far less likely.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's rational. I think it's very irrational, but that's their thought process. I would say, you know, even if it took, you know, like a brown belt like that, starting a, I mean, you have at least an hour a day where the gym isn't being used, where you would, if someone, you know, wanted to do a closed course, you know, you'd be down with that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I think I think 90%, 95, 99% of the gym owners I know would love to provide that space. So,
Well, you provide a discount.
Yeah.
We did the scholarship fund for a long
the
time.
T-shirts.
I'd say we have a good amount of
I think
good amount of LEO, but that's only in the comparison to the cohort of other members. It's not in comparison to the number of sworn officers that are in the Valley.
Correct. I think we're doing above average in terms of the number of law enforcement students that we have amongst, you know, all of the gyms in Montana. But relative to the number of police officers, I think we're still, you know, missing the boat. But, you know, it's 15 years in the Valley trying to drag those guys in, you know. And I tell them straight up, look, like I raised my 4 kids here, and it's not just that I want them to go home safe at night, but I live in the community too, and it actually makes the rest of the community safer too, because we're giving them other options. So that if, you know, when my kids were in high school, if they showed up at a house party, it wasn't, you know, lethal force. There was something in between.
Yeah.
And just the health benefit, you know, just the baseline health that they get from training a couple days a week, and the mindset. I think it has the potential to make you a little bit more comfortable in those confrontations where without that assurance and that experience, I think it's much easier for things to escalate. And but I don't know what the answers to that. I have heard similar to what John's experience was. I've had it explained to me the same way, where, well, I don't want to be going in there and seeing somebody I arrested, or, you know.
Well, don't go to the grocery store then, or the gas station.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I get it.
You live
I
in the
can
world.
understand that headspace, but you could also talk yourself into that and say, well, I guess it's not for me. But then you could also get your ass handed to you on the street by somebody who doesn't train at all, or more than that, you know, it just because you didn't take the time to train and prepare yourself.
Yeah, I know. It like I said, it's I think it's very irrational, especially when you're talking about, as far as I know, 100% of police officers in the U.S. volunteered for the position. Like, they applied. No one drafted them. So it's a choice that they're making. It's a dangerous profession. I think, you know, they're underpaid and they're under-respected. And, like, every time I see officers, like, I was traveling in Texas and Idaho before here, and, you know, I always make it a point to go up and thank them. And I said, I know it's a weird time for you guys. It's like, but not all of us. I'm like, not everybody. The vocal minority maybe, and you know, thank you. And they're always super cool. But, you know, it's not only jiu-jitsu, right? I think let me back up. I think there's also something to be said for lack of leadership, because the one time in Korea that I taught jiu-jitsu to, it wasn't law enforcement, but it was a group of American special forces there, and the 39th Detachment, and their whole job was like liaison between Korean special forces and U.S. And it wasn't until the guy in charge was a jiu-jitsu guy. He was a major at the time, and he contacted me and he's like, I want to sign a contract, and I want our PT 3 days a week. Will you wake up at 6 a.m. and open your school and teach my guys jiu-jitsu 3 days a week? I'm going to make them go. It's their PT. And I'm like, yeah. So, you know, at the top, if they would allocate the resources and make it a requirement, I think it would be better too.
Agreed. What are you guys fired up about jiu-jitsu these days in your own journey? I mean, you guys have both been at it for a while. I mean, what is it about it that keeps you coming back?
Because I just tell my guys this, I tell myself this: if you want to be done, it'll drive you crazy. But if you, because you're never done, right? But if you shift your mindset to, no, it's not about being done. It's that 29 years in, it's more, not less interesting. Because the more you know, the more interesting it gets. And you don't learn more quickly in terms of volume, because there's so much volume as a white belt. Everything's new and you're just accumulating. But
you can think about it looking at the fans.
In terms of, yeah.
Which one of those moves on YouTube gets me out of this?
But in terms of depth of understanding and fun, it's never been better or kind of quicker, and that's not volume at all. I was talking to Travis about this. I mean, Henry Akins is the biggest single jiu-jitsu influence in my last 6 years or so of training, and I credit him with that. And it's been the opposite. It's like training with him was permission to do less in terms of quantity and just go deep, and that's made it just super interesting and super fun. Yeah.
What about you, Trev?
It's been a couple things on the personal side. You know, going back and, you know, on learning some things that I've done for 20 years and then recognizing that, oh, wait, there's a better way to do that. But then, you know, related to that is my coaching. Like, so just that constant drive to figure out, like, how can I get more people better quicker? And, you know, I've picked up some things, obviously, from my coach, is a big advocate for drilling. I mean, he has more drilling in his classes than I do. And I'm always striving for, okay, more time drilling, less time me talking.
He always teases us what we're going to drill for 30 minutes.
It's so hard. It's hard in an hour to teach what you want to teach and then have them drill as much as you want to have them drill. But that's always my goal. My goal is that at least half the class could have been time drilling. So showing less, drilling more, and then also sharing, you know, some of the things that I've learned. And at times it's hard to do that because you walk in there sometimes and you're like, well, you know, a lot of those guys have been with me for 8 years, 10 years. So they've seen me teach and say things that are counter to what I'm now teaching and saying. And you know,
yeah, but that's a good sign.
Right.
That's evolution.
Yeah, I agree.
So just going back there and, you know, like with the passing that we were doing a few weeks back and you know, these escapes from cross sides, like a lot of that's, believe it or not, pretty new to me, right? Like I was doing things a certain way for a long time and they work to a degree. And then somebody, you know, John comes up or I go train with Henry or Matt comes up and somebody explains to me why maybe that's not the best way to do it and then shows you a better way of doing it. It's like the first thing I want to do is make sure I go back and tell everybody that I told to do it the other way, to do it this way. Because I feel this like responsibility to like, well, shoot, like it's one thing where I'm doing something wrong, but it's a whole nother thing when I'm now convincing a whole room full of people to do it the way that I was doing. Because at the time I thought it was the best way to do it. And
I don't think wrong or right is the best way to describe it. If you look at almost anything that has like a V1, V2, V3, V4, it should be moving in that in the direction of efficacy, you know, whatever metric you want to use. And I don't think that the previous versions were wrong. They just were less evolved.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, and you're right. It's not right or wrong. It's just always looking for the best way. So like if there's 5 ways, but one of them's more efficient, one of them has a higher success rate, like trying to find those. And I think the longer I do jiu-jitsu and the more I'm around, you know, people like John and Henry and Matt and people who have been doing it for longer than I have, I'm starting to see where it was easy to get caught up in techniques and because my style, especially when I was competing and stuff, was very attacking and very kind of, I liked the, you know, the fancy stuff and all of that. And then now going back and going, oh, but this is really this is important. And now actually being at a point where I see the value in it, instead of fighting it, you know, accepting it and being like, okay, that there is a better way.
I like the power of subtraction much more than addition. I can remember a few things much better than I can remember a lot.
Yeah.
13-step techniques, I'm like, oh, that's probably not going to be anything I ever do.
No.
There's only one way to end this, and that's to get your guys' thoughts on Gordon Ryan versus Pena 3.
So I watched it live.
We should describe what it is. It was a no time limit,
Correct.
submission only.
Correct.
They had met 2 times before,
Yep.
and he had bested Gordon.
Yes.
What did he get him with the first
He
two
choked
times?
him the first time from the back, but Gordon was about 185 pounds.
And how many years ago was it?
7 or something? I don't know.
That was their first time?
I think so, yeah.
And then how about the second interaction? How'd that go? Because he lost 2, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the submission on the second one.
I think he got him with the exact same back take, but I don't think he finished him. I'm not sure.
And do you remember how recent that one was?
No.
Okay. Sometime between now and 7 years ago. The first
Yeah.
time. And then comes round 3.
Yeah. I mean, I publicly stated on social media that I had no doubt that Gordon would win. I mean, it's a fight. I mean, it was a guess. I couldn't prove it, but I really felt like Gordon would win. And not just because he's the same size now. I mean, they're both like 227.
Yeah, all natural too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean,
Chicken breast, broccoli like a motherfucker.
So anyone can, I guess, at some point, anyone can go watch it. It is what it is. And
It's already up on YouTube.
Is it?
Yeah. Or the highlights, I guess, would be.
So they fought. Pena verbally submitted, said, "I'm done," and
There's another word for that.
there's a lot of words for that.
It's called quitting.
Yeah, there's a lot of words for that. That's a nice one. What I didn't like, and I think Gordon Wright even said this, it's sort of like, of course, it was the day after Leandro Lo died. And Gordon was fine with postponing. I don't think they would cancel. It was a signed contract. But he's like, look, you're not good to fight today. I get that. No, I want to fight, but I want it to be 30 minutes. And he's like, no, we signed a contract. The fight is going to go down how it goes down. No time limit, submission only. But you don't have to do it today. And it was like, okay, an hour or something, time limits. And, it's a draw if it goes. It's not, no one wins. And Gordon's point, which I think is a very valid point, was if you're distraught, that's okay. You don't fight. If you can fight, you're going to fight. Like, we have a contract to fight a certain way. Like, you're ready or you're not ready.
Yeah.
You can't be ready for 30 minutes. And
he gave him the out.
Yeah. And so the last thing I would say is he lost. I think Gordon went all the way until he was about to fall asleep from a choke and tapped. And that's like respect to his opponent. And to not give Gordon, that was pretty weak, because it was going in that direction. He knew it was going in that direction. And then the weakest thing was to invoke the name of his past friend post-fight.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of actually shitting on his memory. And if he would have won, it would have been, I did this for him and he gave me the fighting spirit to win. It's so obvious what he would have said if he won. So it was not a good look.
Trev?
Yeah, I didn't watch it. I read all the breakdowns and stuff like that. I know it went roughly 40 minutes. I know that he quit. I know that things were going in a direction, and we all know. I mean, we know when you're in the middle of a match, when it's like, ooh, like, I'm gassed. I'm starting to get dominated. This is just an eventual, loss. So that part I didn't like. And I particularly don't like what John just mentioned. And I always, when I'm talking to the kids and because I coach a ton. And my biggest thing is, like, if you stepped onto the mat or if you stepped into the cage, you did it because you thought you had a chance to win. You never go out there knowing you're going to lose. Because if you knew that, most people just wouldn't get on the mat or step into the cage.
Yeah.
And so then, post-fight, when you have guys, well, I had this really bad staph infection during my training camp, or, I had a really rough weight cut, or nobody knows this, but I was rehabbing my knee. Like, you would never hear any of that had they won. Like, it wouldn't even come up. But it's like the minute somebody loses, we're so just prone to making excuses. And I don't like that in people at all. I think, you go out there, you give it your best. It's not like he lost to a chump. I mean, in my opinion, Gordon Ryan's the best no-gi grappler in the world currently. So it's not like you need to make excuses for that. You just got beat by somebody who's better than you. So I wish there wouldn't have been that at the end. I do feel bad. I mean, it's an awful situation that, that Leandro Lo was killed the night before. But like John was saying too, Gordon Ryan was totally comfortable with, hey man, traumatic event. Let's just whenever you're ready, we'll do it again. But when you decide to do something, in my mind, even if you had a staph infection or you had a rough weight cut or you're coming off a knee surgery, whatever it is, you believed that there was a possibility for you to win. And it's not until, the inevitable loss that we start kind of feeding ourselves with those excuses. And so I think that part was kind of shitty, but I'll probably go back and watch the match. I got a pretty good idea of how it went just from, reading the breakdowns and stuff. But
how did Gordon Ryan get so much better than everybody else? What is it about him that allows him to do what he's doing?
I don't know exactly. I think he has a lot. No, listen, I mean, nobody gets to that level without tremendous, incredible amounts of hard work. But I think he'll admit that as a purple belt, I mean, he was gifted, right? As a purple belt, I think he was already just killing black belts. And not that he didn't train hard, but I think,
that's the way it is for some people.
Natural, yeah. Some
people are natural-born linguists. Some
Correct.
people are great at math, and some people are physically gifted more than others.
And then add to that, and a lot of those people are lazy, and he's not. So add to that tremendous work ethic, full commitment, 100% commitment, great coach, who's also, and John Honor is not only a great coach, but also, I think, completely single-mindedly focused on this, a smaller part of the game. I mean, he's a good MMA coach, and I'm sure he's a good gi coach, but he's really, I think, hyper-focused on the no-gi submission grappling, and they're really doing that all day, every day. I don't think he's I'm going golfing today. I don't think that's really in his... No, I think
he would be in a rash guard if he was. But
I think he's pretty much all in as well. And so it's that combination where, if any one of those three elements, I'm very gifted, but I'm lazy, or I'm gifted, but I got a crummy coach, or I think it's the hat trick with those three things, and he's
it's crazy to watch.
Mm-hmm.
He's in second gear, breathing through his nose while these other people are just suffering. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest difference is and Hodger's the same way. Some of these guys that are so good, and you're watching them, and you're like, he's beating the best guys in the world, but it doesn't really look like he's trying that hard.
One day we'll all get there. I mean, maybe you guys. I started way later. What do you guys want to close with? I got to get Travis on the road.
No, okay, I'll close with this. It's great to be here and see you guys. I've been blessed with jiu-jitsu that I can travel and teach and stuff, but last February I visited Matt, and he's like, "Oh, do you want me to throw together a seminar?" And I'm like, no, I think it's important to me these days to visit my friends just because they're my friends, even when they're not paying me and a bunch of people are coming to learn from me. And so this time, because I chose to be at home with my daughter in June, I didn't do my typical Montana June seminar, but it was important to come and see you guys. And we talked a lot about how to beat people up, and jiu-jitsu will never not be that. That's what it is, in a nice way. But it's really, I wouldn't do it if I hated everyone in the gym either. And I feel blessed to have you guys and the friends that I made through jiu-jitsu. I feel blessed. So it's great to be back in Montana, even though it's a quick one. But I feel feeling really good about seeing you guys.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm the recipient of that, and very appreciative of having friends like John, and there's a whole bunch of them that it's between the two of us now. It's 52 years of jiu-jitsu, 29 for him and 23 for me. And
dude, don't forget my 4. All right, let's bump those numbers.
But no, I think it's the same for me when I look back on everything that jiu-jitsu's provided for me, all the benefits I've got out of it. I mean, I make a living because of jiu-jitsu now, and I've been really blessed because most people who do jiu-jitsu are just doing it as a hobby, and here I am, making a living out of my hobby. And but I think the most important thing that I've gotten from jiu-jitsu is the relationships that I developed along the way. I have no doubt, if I had to give up everything that I learned about jiu-jitsu but was able to keep all the friendships and things that I made along the way, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah.
It'd be a good trade. I agree.
Yeah.
That's how I met my future wife.
I was going to say, it's coming right up on
That's like a week
from
Friday,
a
Saturday.
week and 1 day from when this comes out, which will be Friday.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can't believe it. I've known Leah for 15 years, And I'm still like, Leah's getting married.
And Travis is the one who got me to try to help convince her to come back.
Oh, to Montana, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like,
You're lucky.
He's like, you tell her because she'll just ignore me because I've told her too many times.
It's just like talking to your kids. Can somebody else please repeat exactly what I have been saying for the last 20 years?
Yeah.
Well, until next time. Next time you're in town, we'll do another one.
I'll try to make it longer. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, next summer.
Are you coming to class tomorrow in Kalispell?
Yeah, I'll be tomorrow at noon.
Sweet. I think I can make that.
Awesome.
We did a cool Q&A today in Whitefish. It was actually very helpful. Stuff that I hadn't seen in a long time.
Sweet. Right on. Look forward to it. Until next time, boys.
Me too. Thank you.